panel, which is going to be hosted by the wonderful, the amazing singer that is Giacomo Zucco. He's going to introduce the panelists, which is all about Bitcoin history. Welcome to the stage, Giacomo.
Thank you very much. Thank you. They're already entering, and now we will introduce these two guests, but I will give a big round of applause just trust me, don't verify, and then I will tell you why. Big round of applause. Also, I was looking in when Joe tried to dox you guys, good resistance to the, nice try, FBI. So, in this conference, you have seen some OG. We had since the first year the likes of Adam Beck, Nick Szabo, Peter Todd, many people involved in the very early, even not just in Bitcoin history, but even Bitcoin prehistory. These three guys were discussing something like Bitcoin even before Bitcoin. But now you're going to hear for the first time two Bitcoiners that were very, very active at the time of the very, very first moves, the first steps of Bitcoin. One of them you have never seen him in Lugano for sure, but you were at Stockholm last year, or I don't remember. No. So it's a first for Lugano, but probably you may know him because he has been around. He's one of the most prolific Bitcoin developers and one of the first Bitcoin developers. Probably as of seniority, he could be the oldest one still around working on stuff connected to with Bitcoin Core. And he's Dashjr, and he's here. And then another another round of applause. Fully deserved. And then there is another character which actually you haven't seen for sure in any conference if you're not around basically in the last few months, because he was there in the very first day, then he disappeared for a while, and he came back mostly in the NOS community, but now we will ask him more about this. And so finally we can see the history of Bitcoin through the eyes of this other very, very important OG, which is Martti Malmi, also known as, you can reveal, I guess, you can
Sirius.
As Sirius. It may not tell you a lot, this name, but it was actually one of the, when you look at Bitcoin Talk and these kind of forums, and you go back and back and back, you don't see many names, and some of them are very, very important. But before, let's not go back there yet. Both people are very active again, mostly because they found a new project to work on, a new way to contribute in Bitcoin or to freedom tech in general in a way which is very connected to Bitcoin. So before we go back to the main topic of the panel about the OG times, just a first round of what are you doing now? So why are you back very active? Why are you back? Why are you forced to go to conferences? What are you shilling? What are you actually working on? So let's start with Luke. What are you doing these days? So I don't know, somebody gave me this shirt. I don't know, what is Ocean? What is datum? Tell us something.
Well, I never stopped working on Bitcoin, so I'm still working on that in general. Last year I also launched Ocean, which is revising the mining pool. One of the first mining pools I started, it was called the Liggies at the time, but when we relaunched it, we decided to change the name to something people can actually pronounce and spell.
I would say Eligius, for example. So
yeah, even among the team, none of us pronounced it the same, so we figured we need a new name. So I relaunched that last year. That's different from most mining pools. Most mining pools are centralized, opaque, and permissioned. You need to tell them everything about you to join them.
KYC, full KYC just to mine on the pool?
Ocean's different. Everything's transparent. Anyone can see the stats for any miner. There are no accounts. There's just use a Bitcoin address to mine. It's non-custodial. When the block is found, the miners get the coins directly from Bitcoin. And recently, Datum, as you mentioned, is software that we released that is basically solo mining. You can make your own blocks, but you still get the benefits of the mining pool because it coordinates the payouts between the miners. Even though you make your own block, the pool can still help you coordinate and share rewards.
So to recap the difference of your project with other mining pool, you can see the block before. Most mining pool, they just ask for your work without even showing you what they're going to mine, and so you're just a blind executor without even any guarantee. Then there is like a permissionless entry point for miners. There is also this kind of datum that will allow the miners themselves to create the template, which is basically, the datum is the finalization of your work started many years ago with get block template, and then nice hash, and then stratum v2. They're all basically instances of your initial idea of get block template, right?
Better hash, not nice hash, but yeah.
Better hash, yeah. And also there is like lighting payouts and something new cooking, right? Well, then let's not spoil too much.
Well, it's been in our FAQ since we launched, but the share marketplace, but that's not live yet.
Not live yet, a marketplace where miner can basically sell and buy with Lightning the shares of the work. So that's impressive. So that's what you're focusing on right now. And then we will see. Of course, some of your answer already includes your work with what I will call Eligius, Eligius, I guess. But some of it came even before. We will go into that later. Martti, you were that mythological name. Then you disappeared, at least from my radar. And then you were back with this idea of Iris, which was a decentralized social media, and something which is very, very impressive to me happened. Instead of pushing one of many competing solutions to the same problem, decentralizing communication, social graphs, the digital square, instead of pushing your own solution, you recognize the network effect of an existing solution, and you just join force. So instead of fixating on your proposal, you basically made your proposal consistent with a standard that is development, and basically you turned your idea into a Nostr client and part of Nostr infrastructure. Will you tell us more about what is Iris, how is doing now, what are your plans for the future of Iris?
Yeah, so I've been working on Iris, my decentralized social web client, for 5 years now. And 2 years ago, I switched to Nostr. I mean, Iris, it was not taking off and gaining traction and users. So I was ready to quit, but then Nostr happened in December 2022. Jack Dorsey joined, and it started attracting crazy amounts of users. And I saw it had a great community and very similar stack to what I was already using. So it was very quick for me to change to Nostr. And it's been one of the most meaningful things I've been working on, and it's really great to be back. I also started going to Bitcoin conferences again last year, after first attending Nostrica in Costa Rica. So this is my 6th conference this year, and I'm grateful to be here with all you guys. It's a great community.
And we're honored to have you. So basically, Nostr re-orange pilled you, not about Bitcoin, but mostly about Bitcoin conferences. So that's very lucky for us, because now we can ask you some stuff. So let's go back. Look, with all the respect to privacy that you want to maintain, tell us what you can tell and what you want to tell about how you discovered Bitcoin. What was for you the first impact with Bitcoin? Did you get it immediately? Did you start to work on it immediately, or in the second wave of rediscovering like many people? So what was your first impact with Bitcoin?
Well, at the time that Bitcoin was introduced to me, I was pretty interested in the tonal number system, which is essentially like hexadecimal, but for regular use, like measurements and things like that. But there was no way to use it with currency. So someone mentioned Bitcoin, and just the mention of it made me look it up and realize that I could use this with the tonal number system as well, and then there would be a total currency. And so that kind of piqued my interest, got me started in development pretty much immediately. It was the first time I'd heard of Bitcoin.
I'm not sure you guys get how mysterious can be the ways people can get into Bitcoin. So let me just maybe give a little bit of context. Most people were not measuring in base 10 like we do after French Revolution. There was base 12, still common with a dozen. Then there was base 16. And Luke was interested in that. So way of measuring, not in base 10. And that led him to Bitcoin. That's wonderful. I mean, that's feels like almost destiny or something. Did you succeed to? So, do you think that Bitcoin right now has a lot to offer to a change in number system, or at this point you just moved over?
Changing number systems is a much bigger project than just changing currencies. It's possible to use tonal with Bitcoin even today. Not many people do, but that's kind of like a different battle after Bitcoin succeeds anyway.
Step 1 and the Fed. Step 2 and the decimal system. I agree with it. It's a passo a passo, as they say. So that's great. And you discovered that Bitcoin for these, and then you started to interact with other people. Again, with all respect, with privacy. What are a few names that you remember interacting with? Did you fight with people back then? Because we like to fight online a lot. I mean, you're always very seraphic and calm, but we also have to love to have controversy to some degree. Do you remember allying with somebody about some strong idea, defending idea against somebody? What do you remember? What do you remember about the first community of Bitcoin developers?
There was a lot of developers that were getting into Bitcoin right at the same time. Most of them did not care for the tonal number system.
Oh, strange.
So it was difficult to get any real traction there initially. I guess it was probably still a year or two away that the P2SH changes were being debated and argued about, and there were 3 of those.
That was his first real battle, like P2SH. So P2SH, anybody here using Bitcoin will remember that there were these old addresses starting with 1. These are pay to public key hash. And then there are the ones starting with 3, where you pay to a script hash. And there are many problems with P2SH, and many bugs and problems. And back then, all the developers were blindly following the fashion, and so they all approved it. And there was one dissenting voice, and that was Luke. And turned out, after many years, you were basically right about all of it.
Well, it wasn't even, wasn't really dissenting from pay to script hash. That was universally considered a good
Mostly
idea.
from BAP specifically?
Yeah, it was specific implementation details, and there was one major bug, which the BIP16, which was eventually what was adopted, limited you to 15 possible addresses in a multisig, whereas the proposal I had created, BIP17, would not have had that bug. And since we're on the topic of Bitcoin history, I should point out that the addresses beginning with the 1 were not the first addresses.
Right, the pay to IP and pay to public key directly. Right, like the famous first transaction between Satoshi and Alfini was not using addresses at all. It was using the IP of Satoshi, IP address of Satoshi. So it's even different. Very, very early times.
Yeah.
So, Martti, how did you discover Bitcoin? Do you have some story which is as interesting? I mean, I know it's hard to top tonal system, but tell us about your first interaction with Bitcoin.
Well, it's a fairly long story, but I'm a libertarian. I wanted to change the world. I didn't trust politicians. I knew that we would never get everyone to vote libertarian, so I went looking for how to change the world through technology. I figured out changing the monetary system would be the most impactful change you could make. So I went looking for alternatives, and Bitcoin had just been released a couple of months earlier in 2009 when I found it in April, May.
So you were not in the mailing list. You got it a little bit later than the first mailing list release.
Yeah. I was never original cypherpunk. So I was a 20-year-old college kid, computer science student back when I found Bitcoin.
You remember the channel? Like you got it like an email suggestion from somebody or?
No, I was just Googling around peer-to-peer currency. It brought up Bitcoin. Back then, there were like less than 10 Google results for Bitcoin.
Did you create the initial Subversion repository?
Yes, I did. Well, at least I did the first push there. Yeah.
Well, explain more because I mean, Luke is moderating even better than me because you were there. So that's interesting for sure.
Oh yeah, so Satoshi published Bitcoin source code. I think could have been a zip file or something, some archive on bitcoin.org. It was not on SourceForge, even though there was a project there. So I made the first, when I started contributing to Bitcoin code, I did some UI stuff and Linux porting. So that's when I made my first pushes to the repository. There's animation on YouTube of the commit history. You can see me and Satoshi floating around for the first year.
Yeah, because you may imagine that since Bitcoin is now used by, well, developed mostly by Linux people using Git, that it was always that way. But again, Satoshi started with a zip binary or with a zip with the source code, and it was a Windows binary. And then people had to introduce, for example, a versioning system. So SourceForge was the first, and then GitHub came actually way later. And then there was also the port into Linux. So right now we consider it obvious to teach people to maybe try to run Bitcoin on a Ubuntu, but back then it was a Windows thing. So Martti started the Linux porting, which is pretty critical, I would say. And that the animation that Martti's mentioned is very, very nice. You can find it probably as Bitcoin code contribution. I don't know, you can probably use some search keys, and you will see these names, these pseudonyms, coming up, going up and down, and at the beginning there are very, very few of them, and then you see this beautiful image of something exploding from a very few people to a mass movement of names and colors and nicknames and stuff. Speaking of nicknames, what do you think about Satoshi's anonymity idea, and how much did you reflect before deciding, for example, to show your face in a place like this instead of just remaining Satoshi-like? You arrived like Dashjr, but there was not an obvious way to get to you personally, and then now you are seen, and so you are leaving your face to be seen. So that's, of course, a change in OPSEC, different from what Satoshi did. So did you have a lot of did you think a lot before doing that, or you were just fine with it? What is your consideration about the Satoshi strategy?
No, Satoshi had the foresight for that, but at the time I was getting into Bitcoin, and I would say probably most of the other developers of the era, it was strictly a nerdy experiment. There was no real expectation that it was going to become a serious project like it has become. So it was no big deal that people knew our names or anything.
When you first showed your appearance in public, it was probably already a little bit bigger, I guess. Maybe starting from, what was your first Bitcoin conference?
I think the first one was San Jose way back.
Okay,
I don't know what year that was.
Pretty early. Okay.
But even then it was, it was growing, but it wasn't it was nothing compared to what it is today in terms of how serious it was. It was still an experiment that, maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. It wasn't seen as a critical thing.
And even now, even if central banks may be more danger to us, still the people defending the decimal system are not yet aware of the danger. So I'm joking. I also, by the way, hate the decimal system.
I want to point out that the decimal system was only adopted by force ever.
Yeah.
It's never been voluntarily adopted.
That's a great connection with Bitcoin. Yeah, you may find it, yeah. As literally true. People was killed in order to enforce that kind of centralized stuff from French revolutionaries. Was never an organic bottom-up adoption. Martti, now I'm calling you Martti, but back then you were just serious. So yep. Why did you decide to switch to a verifiable identity, to switch to a fiat name, we could say? And do you think do you regret it? Do you think it's better, just more efficient? How do you see the trade-off there?
No, actually, I went by my real name from the beginning on SourceForge. So I was Sirius Martti Malmi over there on the forums, and on IRC we used the shorter nicknames.
Okay, so
Sirius sounded kind of cool.
Same
so
idea,
I picked it for Bitcoin specifically.
Sirius B, right? So never an effort to really hide. We also think it was nothing dangerous, nothing scary back then, right?
Yeah, it was nothing big, no biggie.
No biggie, just a nation-state legal tender and central bank collateral. So we have a lot of discussion in Bitcoin. There is this psychological effect in which everything was better back then, you know, the good old times. So the value of the early Bitcoin are not anymore to be seen. Now we are all bankers. Now we are all interested in getting rich. We lost the cypherpunk ideals. Do you share, I mean, if you try to, of course, everybody shared that view because we are all affected by this bias. But if you try to stay very objective about the environment back and now, do you really feel like we have lost something, is getting worse, we are changing for the worst or not? Look
Yeah,
first.
back then, running your own full node was the only way to use Bitcoin. There was no light wallets or this idea that you just trust someone else to hold your Bitcoins for you. And that's essential for Bitcoin to work. Bitcoin doesn't have a centralized entity securing it like the fiat currencies do. So the only way Bitcoin can have any security is if it's decentralized security, if the majority of the people using Bitcoin are using their own full node and enforcing the rules. Without that, we have no security at all. So it's the fact that relatively so few people using Bitcoin have their own node is a serious danger to Bitcoin, probably the biggest threat, bigger than any intentional attacker.
So more than the changing rhetoric about people, I don't know, praising custody by banks or stuff like that, you're concerned about even a more practical metric. So people running their nodes, which has changed with the mobile phones, where people cannot download the blockchain on mobile phones, and so they just connect to some Electrum server or something. And then even with Lightning to a degree, at the very beginning, Lightning required your full node, and now with Neutrino and everything, and also with LSPs, we started to have no nodes to run Lightning. So it's mostly a practical devolution, let's say, degeneration of habits.
Lightning actually can help a little bit even now because you only need the full node when you're receiving the transaction, when you're watching for it to confirm. So with Lightning, you get the channel opening and that confirms, and then you no longer need to pay as close attention to the node in real time, so you can have that be on the phone still.
Very good point. Bitcoin requires that level of decentralization because it's a global consensus system where everybody must check everybody else's transaction. While Lightning, you just care for your transaction as long as the opening of the channel or the close is confirmed. Very good point. Martti, do you share this kind of good old times vibes, especially going out a little bit from the social scene of Bitcoin and coming back in, starting from Nostr? How do you find the ecosystem healthy? The culture is good for you, or you are still basically missing that good old times?
Yeah, I do tend to nostalgize a lot. Maybe part of it is like the pre-Facebook, pre-smartphone era thing, like IRC and forums and all that. And also the community was so, like, it's still enthusiastic, but ideologically driven. It was not about money at all. You couldn't make money with Bitcoin back then.
Or it was about what money is and not how much money you have.
Yeah, true. So I kind of miss the old days vibes in a way. But if I try to be objective, Bitcoin has become something great and incredible, bigger than life in a way. So I think we're headed in the direction that we want to go. Like Bitcoin is winning.
And also, I don't know if you agree, but even if the share of ideologically driven people may be, even if the share may be shrinking, diluted by newcomers that don't care, the absolute number maybe the absolute number of people interested in cypherpunk ideals or Austrian economics may be all-time high in the world, actually.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And Bitcoin is also converting people into Austrian economists.
I think it's the share, the percent that matters more than the absolute number, though, in this case.
For the security reason, right? For maybe a cultural development, the absolute number is also important. But specifically for the security of layer one, is very important the percentage. So we have some work to do there.
And they don't need to necessarily be all economically aligned, as long as there's, enough overlap with the concepts that actually make Bitcoin secure.
Okay, we have the last minute. I will stay here probably forever, but just the last minute. So getting back to the last project, just a few words, not too long, not in a lot of length, and they don't have to be positive. We don't need to be polite, just very frank. What do you think about Nostr and Iris? And then I will ask you the same about mining and ocean. So look, Nostr, as English speakers say, what's your take? You can be brutal, don't worry.
It's unrelated to Bitcoin, but still a useful technology.
Oh, very good. Luke choose not violence. Okay. Martti, ocean, mining decentralization, datum. So what's your take there?
I'm just a web developer. I don't know really, but I appreciate decentralization always.
Bitcoin OGs are diplomatic and sweet, as you can see. Thank you very much. It was wonderful. Thank you.